Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Economic Times webinar, Fascinating Innovation Using AI and Robotics for Greater Good, powered by NTT. Artificial intelligence and robotics are increasingly driving innovation in operations and contributing to boosting top and bottom line outcomes. How organizations innovating in deployment of robotic technologies to create a competitive advantage, provide real-time intelligence and enhance customer delight are some of the topics that will be catered to during this session. Before we go ahead, I'd like to introduce the very special Mr. Thomas Norman, who is known
Here,
as the Robo Whisperer and the father of avatars. In his role at NTT Data, he's one of the most experienced profile in the space of artificial intelligence. He has been involved in a wide range of AI projects all over the world, which gives him
can
the
you hear me now?
ability
Can you
to
hear me
not
now?
gives him the ability to not only talk about experiences but also real-time experiences instead of theory. I'd like Mr. Normark to go ahead and take this forward as a keynote.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this session. I'm looking very much forward to go through some very exciting AI and robotics cases over the next 25 minutes or so. So first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about technology. So technology is just so fascinating, right? And what we know is that when we create the basic infrastructure for a given technology, then we can scale the technology to its extreme. So this building here is 1 kilometer high and it costs $1.2 billion. If you have $2 billion, you can get a taller building. So the same applies for how we are driving. We can fly faster, we can fly higher, and actually the same is also applying for AI and robotics. So what we have seen over the past 5 years is that the basic foundation for AI and robotics has now come to a stage where we can scale it infinitely. We have a lot of data and we have a lot of compute power. Some of the things that we can do, some of the benefits, some of the problems we can solve with AI and robotics, you can see here. So when we go and work with clients and users, these are often the things that we are actually doing for them. So it's something about faster decision-making, something about automation, better forecasting and predictions, increased efficiency, new creativity and innovation. We can eliminate human error, and we can help the humans perform better and reduce the cost. So AI and robotics can be very glamorous and fascinating, and I will come to that. I promise you will see avatars, you will see robots, but I would actually like to start with some real world cases that are not that fascinating, maybe even invisible and a little boring, but they can bring tremendous value to the users and to the clients. One example is this solution. It's a computer vision solution. We have trained an AI model to do two things: recognize blue pallets and recognize white plastic boxes. So this is the only thing that this AI algorithm can do. And as you can see here, when the boxes and the pallets goes in and out of the warehouse, the AI model can count how many is going in and how many is going out. And in that way, this client from Norway would always know how many pallets and how many boxes they have on stock. and when they need to order new ones. So a very concrete problem solved with a simple AI solution. The alternative would be to have a human being standing and counting 24/7 in each gate of the warehouse. That would be kind of painful, I believe. So this is a very good application when we talk AI and robotics. Another case is this one. So this is a solution that we have created together with a startup. And this small box here that you mount on the wall in your shower, it has been trained to do one thing. It can recognize the sound of a shower that is turned on. And what happens when the shower is turned on is that the clock starts ticking. And what we can see is that when the users are able to see how long they have been in the shower, they would actually reduce the time that they shower by 20%. So again, a very simple AI solution that can solve a problem both with sustainability, but also with the utility bill. This is a solution that we created for a client that is manufacturing diapers, and these diapers are for elderly people in nursing homes. And what we have done is that we have digitized the diaper. So there's like a wire net in the diaper, and then there is this small chip that sends information from the diaper. And first of all, the client wanted just to be able to see if something had happened to the diaper, so the elderly people would not have a wet diaper for a long time. But the interesting thing is that when they started collecting data from all the users, then they started finding patterns in the data. And now they can actually diagnose incontinence, and they can prevent infectious bladder. So going for a manufacturing business, transforming actually into having a business within life science and healthcare. The next case is a case from an NGO. It's called Children's Welfare. And children's welfare is somewhere you can go to if you are a child and you have problems. So you can call this helpline and talk with educated people about your problems. What we did was that we helped them solve a huge problem. And what also happened was that when the news picked up that children would be exposed to artificial intelligence, then it ended in the 7 o'clock news and in the newspapers all over. But the problem was not to be overseen. So the problem was that every year, 131 children would contact this helpline, but they would not get an answer. They would just be in a long telephone queue or in a long chat queue. So because of resource limitations, this NGO could not help all the children. The children had many different kind of problems. They wanted to talk about divorce, grief, love, mental illness, drug abuse, suicidal thoughts. So there were a lot of topics that these children could talk about. And what we decided to do was actually to train an AI that could understand these topics and then feed the good information to the counselors while they were talking to the children. So what is actually happening is that, so this is an example from the screen where they are chatting with the child, and the AI is on the right side. And the AI advisor would listen into the conversation and try to feed good information back to the counselor in real time. And I can just show you a small video here of how it actually works. So this is Charlotte. She is the manager for that NGO, and she is here on stage presenting the solution.
Here today, it's very exciting. Children's Welfare is a helpline that helps a lot of troubled children every year. Over the past 2 years, NTT Data has been working with this NGO to make the service more efficient. and effective with AI.
Where are they coming from? Oh, here you go. Come in.
Vi ser med, Charlotte.
On a train, out of town, driving over swinging bridges.
Then we're going to show it.
So let's just show you the system. We're not inviting any children into the system today. Asmus will be the child, but the examples that we are showing you are actually examples from real conversations from children. Let's have another. And she says, it's because they're bullying me with something with my body, and I'm really sad about it. And now the AI knows from 3 messages, it can tell that it's still about bullying as a main topic, but now it has concerns about the body, like body development, and it also has body ideal as a topic. And this way we can show the counselor a set of guidance to how to handle conversations about a topic like bullying. And if they needed some place to refer the child, there are referrals, and there are also something.
We do want the counselor to know how confident is the AI.
Because it had a human aspect to it. So it had the soul. So building the whole thing required us to give everything. So there was no shot, but so far we have shown that we can build models that are not only good, but also ethical, right? Thank you.
And of course, the ethical aspects of this has been a very important part of the project, and we have done a lot of initiatives to make sure that the AI algorithm is fair and is not discriminating any children. But again, imagine having this digital colleague that can help you and sits next to you all the time and feeds you with helpful information. This is actually what this AI is doing. So the next thing I just want to talk about is AI when it comes to robots and avatars. And what we have been doing over the past 5 years is that we have tried to replicate human behavior in technology. So this robot here is actually our first try to replicate human behavior. And what we did was that we actually trained it to have conversations just like normal human beings would have. And as you can see, we got quite far, so all the way to national TV. It acted as a talk show host on a national radio and performed on the big stages. But what we also found out was that this sweet plastic robot could not activate the emotional centers of our brain and our body. When it comes to brand loyalty and customer lifetime value, what we call emotional connection is very, very important. And you cannot establish emotional connection without having a human interface. So the human face is the most powerful and universal interface that we know. And everyone understands the face, right? From the very moment that we open our eyes and look at our parents. And this is what we wanted to look into. How could we establish that feeling with technology? The power of a smile is something that is very hard to replicate. But what we did was that we created these high fidelity photorealistic avatars, as you can see here. So this lady is not a real person. It is a digital avatar. But what you can see is that when you establish that eye contact, you see that small, like the little smile, the micro expressions, and also the human imperfection. Then you actually activate some emotional centers in your body and in your brain. And this is where your right brain starts getting active. So what we can do now is that we can take sort of like the AI capabilities from the robot, and we can put it into this digital human, as they are called, and then we would have something that appears very much to be a human being, but actually is technology and a machine. What we have done is that we have created a platform where we can actually sort of like give digital birth to what we call digital newborns. So imagine that you have these digital newborns that comes with a basic set of human capabilities. So they can see, they can speak in a natural language, they can understand a natural language, many languages actually. They can understand emotion and they can express emotions. They have a memory, and then they have this human appearance that makes them appealing and recognizable. We have then trained these digital newborns to cover different job functions or roles. We call them personas. And as you can see here, there is anything from a Kia Mia up here is a car dealer, a digital human car dealer. We have our fireman Sam, who's a concierge. We have a digital clinician, also a tourist information guide, receptionist, sales agents. So a lot of different personas that can actually go into the real world and help support the users and the humans with the functions that they are trained to do. I'll just show you a small demo of how it is working. Also live demo from stage here. So here we go.
Join us on stage. Coming in from the side here, give them a warm welcome.
I'm going on holiday, so I guess some travel insurance.
Yay, time to travel. Where will you be going?
I'm going to Scotland.
Ah, I love Scotland. When is your holiday?
It's around the middle of July.
This year?
Yes.
Are you already a customer here, or should I help you create a profile?
All right, Nanette, that was kind of impressive, I'd say.
You can see another of my twins, Triana, running on a Raspberry Pi inside a car. She's a travel companion, helping and entertaining the passenger in a self-driving car towards their destination. Our ETA is 14:15, so in 10 minutes. You should be able to make it in time for your next calendar appointment at 14:30. Thanks for your attention. You may clap now.
So as you could see, you can give the digital humans kind of personality also. They can be inside a car, they can be an insurance agent. So they have so many applications that we could think about. I'll just show you another small video of our receptionist persona that we have actually running quite a number of places. So here we go.
Hi, I have a meeting with Bjorn Jorning Viskard.
Who from this list is it?
Yeah, it's option 2.
Ah, Björn Jorning Quistgaard, great person. Björn has been notified and is coming to get you shortly. Your meeting starts in 14 minutes, and it takes place in meeting room number 2.
Cool, thank you.
Hi there, I have a delivery here for... Hi?
Hi there, how can I help you?
I have a package here for Brian Hansen.
Alrighty, I've let Brian know you're here. Please wait a bit.
Okay, wow, great.
Happy I could help. By the way, the weather report says it's going to be so hot today, so make sure to stay hydrated and get a cold drink in our waiting area before you head out again.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
So as you can see, they can be at many places at the same time. They can speak a lot of languages, and all in all, we have seen that this digital human concept has really taken off, and we are now looking into some of the more advanced cases where we can also help solve some bigger problems. But this year at Tour de France, there will be this digital human Tour de France promoter called Victoria, and she will be following all the stages and be in the fan areas and being there to guide the guests and the spectators. So we can see again many applications for this technology. The last one I would like to introduce you to is our AI learning helper. So we sort of like under the pandemic, we took the avatar concept and said, okay, we can create these intelligent digital humans that can actually communicate in the terms of human beings. And why not try to build a solution that can help children learn to read because of the situation with COVID and homeschooling. So we created this AI learning helper, which is an emotional responsive teacher that lives on a screen. Every child can have one. And it becomes sort of like a learning buddy. And I can just show you a small video of how it actually works.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, Lucas, are you ready for our next adventure?
Yes.
I found some great books for you. Which one would you like to read today?
Pirate Boy.
Ahoy, matey! Are you
On the way. This is a tale of a tiny snail.
Great big grey-blue humpback whale? Can you say the learning helper? The future of personalized education. Ha-ha! Hope to see you soon, kids!
So this solution is really using all the AI capabilities that we know that are out here. So in order to understand if the child is pronouncing the word correctly, we have a language model that can listen to the phonetics of a word. We have question and answer algorithms. So the AI learning helper can ask questions based on the text of the book. We have also emotional detection. So from the camera, we can see if the child is distracted, tired, or just not motivated. And then we can change sort of the teaching strategy in real time. And of course, the real value of this application is the scalability. So every child can have their own because we can scale the technology to the extreme, like we saw with the building in the beginning. We can do the same with AI and robotics, and that's why it's so powerful. So coming back to the beginning, I would like to again remind you that this technology can really bring value. It is a new technology, a new superpower that can help us with faster decision making, like the NGO we saw with the children's welfare and the AI advisor. We can automate, like we saw with the counting of pallets and boxes in the warehouse in Norway. We can do better forecasting and predictions, like we saw with the digital diaper, and they can predict whether someone would have an infectious bladder. Increased efficiency, of course, new creativity and innovation. We can eliminate human errors. We can help the human perform better. And yeah, of course, we can reduce costs. So with those words, I would actually like to conclude my presentation and hand back to the panel and the organizers. Thank you very much.
Mr. Normark, this is very, very interesting, and I'm sure the audiences would also agree with me. Just 1 minute of your time, or the audiences, that we have planned a Q&A window for 10 to 12 odd minutes, after the panel discussion. And I would urge each one of you to share your questions, any queries, which will be taken up by the speakers via the chat box. Moving on to the very interesting and power-packed panel discussion, we have obviously Mr. Thomas Normark, Global Head of AI and Robotics Innovation Technologies, NTT Data Business Solution, Denmark. Beyond that, we have Mr. Rajesh Mohandas, Vice President, Thomson Reuters, Ms. Theresa Kushner, Senior Director, Data and Analytics Solution, NTT Data Services, and Mr. Vikas Desai, Chief Technology Officer, Bentley Nevada at Baker Hughes. Over to you, speakers.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How is everyone today?
Doing
Great.
well.
Always.
Thank you.
We had a great presentation by Thomas Normark. And what we'd like to do now is ask some of our experts what they're doing with this challenging new kind of technology. So what would you guys think about having this technology help you in the great resignation that we've heard about people leaving their jobs? Where do you think it would be applicable?
You want to go first, Vikas?
Sure. If I look at, there are a couple of things that I think today. One is more from the internal. So I'm in a technology function. I am in more product development and digital development and so on. And if you see where the development itself is going, I mean, some of these things is done by AI, or this, we are using AI for the development itself, right? Or that is where the world is going. So if you hear software 2.0 or the firmware development, there are tools being developed that they will generate the code to start with based on a lot of analytics data. So what you are trying to do, what you have done in the past, or just from the pattern matching pictures and images and those kind of things, a lot of self-driving cars. They're not, you can't teach them by coding every pattern on the road. It is done through a lot more through the pictures. And these pictures are fed to a robotics or AI engine, and that turns into code. So that is more like internal development efficiency that we can do, so that we can try to reduce the number of people required for that. But I think in this industry, we are mainly an energy technology company. So we are in energy industry and oil and gas industry. The great resignation is now, but we also had the challenge of scarcity of skills for quite some time. Mm-hmm. The critical skills are getting rare and rare. And especially they are not available at every location, because if you see oil and rigs can be very, very remote locations. So how do we get all this data? So it's not only AI, but it's the cloud connectivity, our ability to handle the big data, all that coming together. How do we get the data to common location and build that expertise and able to do some of these services? What we saw in a chatbot in a similar way, the basic functions can be done through the chatbots, but beyond that, we do centralize so that we can increase the efficiency of the people. So there are multiple areas that we are looking at. How do we bring in technology to overcome some of these challenges?
Very good points. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, beyond doubt, data critically plays data plays a very vital role. But having said that, the issue with people will continue, right? It's not a new phenomena we have been seeing, and every I'll take you back. Maybe if I take the cue from Vikas and look at data, and let's look at the data for the past 2 decades. Maybe in 1999, this is where we can start at looking at how the democratization of talent happened. That was a time when the world introduced to the outsourcing world. The jobs actually started growing, and the talent started developing its roots into technology with more depth. And then came the 1999 was the WTC fall, the .com crash happened, and the Y2K things happened, and that was a time when there was a reshuffle. That was a time when industry started looking at the world of data recovery, the outsourcing or leveraging global locations from a work standpoint. And further, I would say, while we were about to stabilize, maybe 2004 was another event that triggered, and then the 2007 Lehman crash, then came the 2014, and then the 2017 COVID, and now we're talking 2022, where we are going to see a shift in happening. Now, if you go back and look how technology is evolved, right? 2009 was the introduction of the the early era of cloud. 2004 is where the SMAC stack came into place, right? The social media, mobility, cloud, and analytics played a very vital role. 2007, even before we thought we are stabilized, there were a lot of concerns about cloud, and cloud was limited only to the CRM world, and a lot of banking and insurance companies were not very confident about. But every time we have seen the talent shifting, every time we have seen talent being upskilled, and every era, every 3-4 years, when the talent is upskilled and is ready to meet the new challenge, you're going to see the shift happen. So it is not new. I would say we need to be prepared. But now in 2022, how I see is basically the mass talent is ready and is supported by machines. Today, we are not dependent only on the human talent. The automation, the components of AI, and the low-code, no-code platforms have given us so many opportunities that if a talent mass having the right attitude and ability to understand can be quickly upskilled to deliver the outcomes and the results. So I agree that there is a mass movement from one industry to another industry, from one technology to another technology. I think industries today are well prepared. At least that's how I see on it. And the resignation era is going to continue. Maybe like I shared data, right? From 99 to now, we have at least 5 data points where 5 different technologies have evolved and matured. We are in the early stages of the AI, and for sure, 3-4 years from now, AI is going to be maturing itself, and something new is going to come our way. So that's my looking at.
So that's a very interesting comment. But let's think about, how are you preparing for that constant change, which is what you've talked about? Right.
Now, at least if I take our example, the way we are looking at, we have 3 plans put in place, plans across the processes, plans across the people, and a continuous upskilling and a rotation plan. So we encourage talent rotation, we encourage talent pipeline, we are connected with industries, or we are connected with the educational institutes, telling this is how the demand supply chain is. It is difficult to stop the movement of talent, and then it is the right, I would say, a practice to retain talent by compensating them with benefits and rewards, because that's going to disturb the equilibrium. I would not be in a favor of holding back talent who want to experience a movement and try and experiment something else, maybe in some other organization or as an entrepreneur if their skills are. So things that what we are doing is, one, make sure that your demand supply chain or the talent supply chain is maintaining an equilibrium with understanding and forecasting as to what kind of talent and skills are required. 2, automate the known skills. Right? I'm not talking about automating the processes. Automation of processes is something that we are doing since 2018 to 2022. That's where we are now. But what I'm talking is automating the skills. If you have a known skill, if you have a known database of how the coding is or how the technology works, or if you're not in a technology company, maybe you are in a content industry, you are in a services industry, you are in a product industry, make sure that your components are triggered in such a way which are containerized. If I take a queue, and I'll tell you what exactly we are doing with an example. If you take a queue from a microservices architecture, we're trying to see if a microservices architecture can be implemented in the talent model as well. We are creating a talent marketplace, and the hierarchy is quite flat. And depending on the demand, such a talent can be mobilized directly to the workforce. That way, your risk of waiting period to absorb a talent from the market or waiting for the talent to come in and then start the work is drastically reduced. I would say The readiness is where if there is a talent that you lose for a period of time, in less than 7 weeks, you're up, in less than 7 days, you're up and running with the same kind of speed and technology awareness, with the ability to deliver the results. So that's the preparedness.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing this story. So what other things are we doing with technology to increase our capability to stop global warming? So net zero is probably one of your objectives. So how are you using AI or technology to help that?
If I can look at from our perspective, so what we started with, I mean, we are looking at AI to bring in for some of our process efficiencies and building and simplifying our processes. But we also started looking from, there's two things. One is our inward looking aspects, which is simply the energy optimization, that what the energy that we consume, and looking at that data and trying to bring more automation and AI into that so that we can use the energy a lot more optimally in our own operations, right? So that is a direct contribution. But more importantly, what we are looking, we are just in the early baseline stages here, but collecting the data on the product life cycle of our products we make. So we make the big gas turbines and that kind of equipment, or the equipment related to oil and drilling and so on. What is the product life cycle and what is the emission that we cause overall life cycle? We are just going through that exercise, and once we have that, we can utilize that data to optimize that itself, and that is going to translate directly into how do we operate this into their, when we have deployed this at customer place, right? How we can start managing those, how we can build more efficiency into those. And then we are bringing some of the emission models there, where we can start looking into what is the emission based on the energy consumption also they are doing, and how do we optimize that? Because a lot of times there is just a process optimization or operations optimization can straight away contribute to the emissions and the sustainability. So that is something that we are trying to look at from our internal as well as external perspective, from the solutions perspective across the product life cycle.
That's very interesting. So you guys have talked about technology a lot, how it helps in the environment, how it helps in the Great Resignation. So with you and Thomas, talk to me about what the challenges are in implementing some sort of AI in your organizations, whether it's what Thomas does or it's what you have with your gas pipelines and what you're trying to manage.
Rajesh,
Thomas, you want to start?
Well, we are in our infancy of implementing. The biggest challenge that we face is readiness of infrastructure. Our infrastructure readiness is not going to be supporting that kind of volume that AI comes in. The second big challenge we are facing is the problem of ethics. When we define the AI ethics, the transparency is the biggest challenge. And the neural networks, we all know, after the second node or the third level of visibility, after that, what happens, nobody knows. And coming from a legal background, I can tell you that's one of the biggest risks. It's a liability on an organization who is not able to explain what exactly is happening. So the explainability quotient of AI is a limitation factor. Though we have successful pilots, I think a large-scale implementation is one of the biggest challenges we're facing. We are still in the labs. We need to move away from the labs into mainstream implementation. And there are limiting factors. People who are bold enough to take risks would be the one who are going to be leading us, taking cautious routes in road here.
And the unregulated industries as well, I'm sure. Any other challenges that you guys see?
I fully agree with Rajesh. First of all, I think the infrastructure is a key thing. I mean, AI, we see the AI and the outcomes, but there is so much happens in the back end, especially with the volumes of the data and the ability to handle that data across, so that is a huge thing. And I mean, 5G should help once that infrastructure becomes a lot more. If you see 4G in a way transform a lot of consumer industry, right? I mean, Netflix and all the streaming services wouldn't have been that effective without 4G. I think 5G will do that to the industrial world quite a bit because of the ability to handle the data. But infrastructure is definitely one area. Ethics, and this is transferability in this another area. I see the adoption and the risk appetite. One challenge that we see in this industry is very we, like Bentley or Baker Hughes or companies similar to us, come a lot more from the domain expertise. We understand the machines, we understand the mechanics. So we have been a lot more rule-based or physics-based analytics in the past. That limits a lot of predictive analytics capability. And now there is a lot of happening on the data sciences and machine learning and all those kind of areas where we can do a lot more predictive analytics. But there are pros and cons for each of this. What's the physics-based models can do a lot more deterministic work, whereas the ML models are a lot more probabilistic kind of stuff, right? Even the customers and in this industry is used to a lot more deterministic in the past, and we are trying to combine. The solution is not this or that. Solution is being hybrid, but I think we have to crack that. How do we have the hybrid models, and how do we drive the adoption? Because there is a skepticism around this in general because of the non-deterministic nature of it, right? So, and there are areas where we can be non-deterministic or not 100% deterministic, and there can be areas where we cannot be. So how do we fix that? I think that is something, and it is changing. If I look at 5 years back, the adoption of cloud itself was a challenge in say our industry in general. AI was just in infancy, and now I see a lot more changing. People are asking for it. People are willing to share the data. So I think it will slowly change. The change is happening, but we still have these challenges to take care of.
You mentioned something very interesting, which is how are you preparing your users to interact with anything that has AI behind it?
We basically see the digital maturity across our users as well, and there are different maturity levels across how you're adopting that. But the key thing is there is no direct you say you show something, this is my specification, this is what you use it. This is typically trials, right? You have to engage. This is more partnership than the traditional sell model. So you have to get into and say, I can put my AI on your 50 machines or 50 assets and show the value for next 6 months, right? Because it takes time for AI as well. But the models have to learn. They have to understand those machines, and then they can start giving the results. But one thing is we have to build that trust, and that trust can happen through the value proposition and actual demonstration of the value. So that is something that we try to do that. Yeah.
Any other comments? That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
True. In fact, trust factor is something which is going to improve our adoption. The way we trust our machines in the past, the moving out from typewriters to computers was one of the biggest learning lessons on the factor of trust, right? We all have seen through it, and we have also seen the science fiction movies which showed computers as threats and kind, right? So those were the early 90s when we were first introduced to machines which could be having the powers. And today, fast forward 3 decades, we're talking about machines which are touchless operations, which can understand, mimic human, build the cognitive faculties. And there is definitely a apprehension, there is fear more, and as these fears reduce and the trust increases, for sure the adoption levels will increase. But my take would be, unlike Vikas told about 5G, with 5G, the infusion of quantum computing is going to be the 2 key elements for the next decade, or maybe defining moments for this century to say how will the AI would be adopting, and the adoption of AI going high.
That's incredible. I'm looking forward to seeing all the AI applications that come out of your shops. Thank you very much for your conversation and your comments. They were very much on target. So I think now we turn it over to questions. Do we have any questions from anybody on the panel? Would you like to say something or to make final comments?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Vikas.
Go ahead, Rajesh.
Yeah, my only comment is I'm quite eager and looking forward for both as a user as well as a contributor to AI to see how exactly things will evolve. For sure, our next generation is going to see AI being virtually everywhere, right from education, healthcare, you name it, you have it. So that's where we are looking at. And I think we at least what we are doing now is an experiment phase. We have both a responsibility as well as contributions to be done and to be done at a very large scale. And then the only threat will be the initial few risks, which will definitely hit our way. There are going to be learning lessons. There may be some legal disputes we can foresee, and that's a part and parcel of the game. So we'll have to live through it as we cross this chasm, and then the adoption will be.
Yeah, I think same comment from my perspective here. Advanced analytics AI is a key for us. I mean, it is very clear, and our examples are probably a little boring than what Thomas showed earlier, which is touching human lives every day. But there is already the AI changing our day-to-day lives. In the industry, this is going to be the key, and that's where you see AI is a buzzword all around, and it's not just for the sake of technology hype. It was a technology hype early stage in the few years back, but it is now becoming reality and coming into the mainstream products and solutions, and that will continue to increase as we move forward, and all of us should be ready for that across the life cycle of the products. So.
It takes a lot for us to get ready for that.
Yep,
I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I think Shakshi is going to round this up for us.
Yes, very much.
Okay.
So I would like to conclude this webinar with a note of thanks to Mr. Thomas Normark, Mr. Rajesh Mohandas, Ms. Theresa Kushner, and Mr. Vikas Desai for their contribution in making this a thought-provoking and candid exchange. As a special note of thanks, I would like to also thank NTT for being a part of this event and being a partner. Last but not the least, to all the attendees of participating in good numbers and making this a very, very interesting exchange. Thank you and good night.